There are moments when nothing feels quite right. Maybe it's when you stare at your own reflection for too long, and suddenly that image looks unfamiliar, or when you wake up from a dream so vivid that for a split second, you're not entirely sure where you are. And then, like a snap of the fingers, everything goes back to normal and you brush it off. But he says, what if that feeling wasn't a mistake? What if it was a glimpse of something your mind has always tried to hide? Mind-blowing truth. You're not who you think. From the moment you were born, a story started being written about who you are. A name, a face, an identity built from memories, experiences, and beliefs you picked up along the way. You believed it. We all did. But what if that story is just an illusion? What if the you think you are isn't as solid as it seems? Ever caught yourself reminiscing about a past event, only to realize the details shifted when you told someone else? Like your mind quietly rewrote parts of the past without you even noticing. Now imagine, it's not just a memory that can be distorted, but everything you believe about yourself. The mind is a master illusionist. It doesn't just filter reality, it rebuilds it. It pieces together your identity from scattered fragments, reorganized memories, and borrowed beliefs. You think of yourself as a fixed being, but what happens when you look closer? Is there really an unchanging core inside you? Or is everything you believe yourself to be just a reflection of your thoughts and experiences? What if your identity is as fleeting as a dream that vanishes the moment you wake up? What if your mind is just a surface, like water, always reflecting something, but never revealing the depth of the ocean below? If you're not who you think you are, then who are you? Really? It's a question that might feel unsettling, but maybe, just maybe, it's the first step towards something bigger. Are you ready to see beyond the illusion? From the moment you open your eyes in the morning to the second you drift off to sleep at night, there's something that feels undeniably real. The sense of being you. The self that thinks, feels, and experiences the world seems solid, continuous, familiar. But what if this identity is nothing more than an elaborate trick played by your mind? What if everything you believe yourself to be is just a mental construct, a reflection of neurological processes running behind the scenes of your consciousness? Modern neuroscience has uncovered something both fascinating and unsettling. The identity you carry with you may be far less real than it appears. Your brain, working silently and relentlessly, is constantly inventing and reinventing who you are. The you that you think you know might be nothing more than an emergent phenomenon, an illusion created by billions of neurons interacting with each other. But if what you call identity is just a byproduct of brain activity, what does that mean for the way you see yourself? The illusion starts with a simple fact. Your identity isn't some fixed entity inside you. It's a story your brain constructs. What you feel as you is nothing more than a collection of memories, habits, and external stimuli, constantly rearranged to create a sense of continuity. Every experience you've ever had isn't stored as an objective fact. It's reinterpreted by your brain, filtered through your beliefs and emotions at the time. Think about your childhood memories. Some of them probably feel so vivid that they seem etched in stone. But are they really? Neuroscience tells us that our memories aren't like files locked away in an untouched archive. Instead, every time you recall something, your brain reconstructs that memory, modifying details without you even realizing it. Tiny elements can be added, altered, or even erased. That means that the very foundation of your identity, your memories and experiences, is constantly shifting. If your past can be rewritten, if your sense of self can change depending on the context, then who are you really? Now try to remember a defining moment in your life, something that shaped you. What comes to mind? Are the details crystal clear or a little fuzzy? If you had to describe it to someone else, would your version of the story match exactly what happened? Or has your mind already edited that story countless times, tweaking little details along the way? And if what you consider your past is really just a collection of stories your mind has rewritten to fit your current version of you, then what does that say about your identity? If someone asked you who you were 5 years ago, your answer would probably be very different from how you describe yourself today. Your opinions have shifted, your tastes have evolved, you've learned, unlearned, and redefined so much. Yet despite all these changes, there's still this feeling that there's a real you beneath it all. But here's the thing, that feeling is an illusion. Your brain works like a film editor, adjusting narratives, filling in gaps, and reconstructing your story so that it feels seamless. But this editing happens behind the scenes. You don't notice that your identity is constantly being rewritten, because your mind ensures that everything appears smooth and continuous. Ever noticed how your sense of self shifts depending on where you are? At work, you might see yourself as serious and responsible. With friends, maybe you're the outgoing, carefree one. When you're alone, your mind takes on an entirely different tone. If the self were something fixed and unchanging, shouldn't it always remain the same? But what if this constant transformation isn't just a response to external circumstances, but proof that the self was never real to begin with? The truth is, everything you believe yourself to be is always shifting, flowing like a river. The you of yesterday is not the same as the you of today, and the you of tomorrow, that will be someone else entirely. But if everything you think about yourself is in constant motion, what remains in the end? If you still have doubts about the illusion of self, there's an experiment that might completely change how you understand consciousness. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted a study that revealed something astonishing. Your brain makes decisions before you're even aware of them. Here's how it worked. Participants were asked to move their hand whenever they wanted, while their brain activity was monitored. The shocking discovery: before the person consciously decided to move their hand, their brain had already initiated the process. The neural impulse responsible for the action occurred a fraction of a second before the person was even aware of making a choice. This raises a disturbing question. If your brain acts before you think you've made a decision, then who's really in control? Is the self you believe yourself to be just a passive observer of the decisions your mind has already made? This experiment suggests that what we call free will might be nothing more than an illusion. The decision has already happened before you even realize it. But if your identity isn't the one making choices, then who or what is? If every thought, every decision, every emotion arises from subconscious neurological processes you have no real control over, is there even a true you behind it all? Or is this self you cling to just a reflection of brain activity, an afterthought of consciousness? The answer to that question might be unsettling, but it might also set you free. If everything you think you are is just a mental construct, shaped by distorted memories and filtered perceptions, then what's left when all these illusions are stripped away? This question has echoed through the ages, woven into the teachings of great spiritual masters, philosophers, and alchemists of the mind. While neuroscience suggests that the self is a fluid and ever-changing phenomenon, esoteric traditions take it even further. Your individual identity isn't fixed because, at the deepest level, it was never separate from the whole to begin with. Hermetic wisdom teaches that the universe isn't just made of matter and energy, it's made of mind. Reality, as we perceive it, is merely a reflection of the universal mind, an infinite consciousness from which every human being is an expression. Just like a single drop of the ocean carries the essence of the vast sea, your individual mind is nothing more than a fragmented reflection of the primordial consciousness. This means that what you think you are, your beliefs, emotions, and perceptions, is not your true essence. The self you identify with is just a temporary reflection within this vast field of consciousness. So if your identity is an illusion projected by the mind, where is the real you? Ancient Hermeticists described the individual mind as the surface of a lake, restless from the winds of emotions, distorted by beliefs, clouded by past experiences. But when the waters become still, something deeper is revealed. The true self isn't found in the thoughts that come and go, nor in the emotions that rise and fall like ocean tides. It resides in the silent awareness that observes it all. You are not the voice constantly speaking inside your head. You are the one listening. But if this is true, why does it feel so distant? From the moment you were born, you were conditioned to identify with your mind, your thoughts, desires, fears. You were taught to see yourself as a separate being, disconnected from the world around you. But this separation is nothing more than a perceptual trick. Think of the sky and the clouds. The sky is always there, vast and unchanging, while the clouds come and go, shifting in form, appearing and disappearing. Your true identity is like the sky, eternal, infinite, free. But your mind, with its endless stream of thoughts, functions like the clouds, obscuring that truth. If you could silence those clouds even for a moment, what would remain? What's left when you're not identifying with your thoughts? What remains is pure presence, a consciousness beyond the limitations of time and space. This is your true self. It doesn't depend on the identity you've built or the stories your mind repeats. It simply is. But if this true self is always present, why does it seem so hard to access? Hermetic wisdom teaches that everything in the universe vibrates. Nothing is ever truly still. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel carries a vibrational frequency. If your mind is filled with fear, doubt, and confusion, your perception of self will feel fragmented and limited. You'll see yourself as small, separate, and vulnerable. But if you raise your mental vibration by cultivating higher states of awareness like peace, gratitude, and love, you begin to perceive yourself differently. You stop seeing yourself as an isolated individual and start feeling your connection to the whole. Ever noticed how your perception of reality shifts based on your emotional state? When you're anxious, the world feels chaotic. Your mind is restless, filled with scattered thoughts. But when you're at peace, everything slows down. Your perspective expands. Life flows effortlessly. That's because your mental vibration directly influences how you experience existence. So if everything you think you are is tied to your vibrational frequency, then the key to transcending the illusion of self is to elevate that vibration. The more you access higher mental states, the closer you come to experiencing your true essence, the one that isn't defined by thoughts or beliefs but exists as pure awareness. Imagine your mind as a mirror. If it's dirty and fogged up, the reflection is distorted. But if you clean it, the image becomes clear. In the same way, when you elevate your mental vibration, your perception of yourself sharpens. You begin to recognize that you were never just a collection of fleeting thoughts and shifting identities. But how do you clean this mirror and access your true identity? The answer might be something that's always been within your reach, but perhaps you've never looked closely enough to see it. If your identity was built over time based on memories, perceptions, and beliefs, then it isn't fixed. It's simply a reflection of everything you've believed up until now. Just like a river never flows through the same spot twice, what you believe yourself to be is also in constant transformation. But if everything you think you are can change, then who are you, really? The answer isn't about finding a new identity. It's about dissolving the one that was constructed. You don't need to become something different. You simply need to remove the layers of illusion covering your true essence. Hermeticism teaches that universal laws govern both the mind and reality. When you learn to apply them consciously, your perception expands. You stop identifying with what is temporary and begin to recognize what is eternal within you. Here are 3 practices, based on these principles, that can help you transcend the illusion of self and recognize yourself as pure consciousness. As within, so without. The world you see is a reflection of the state of your mind. If, internally, you see yourself as limited, small, or disconnected, that's the reality you'll experience. But when your perception shifts, your experience shifts with it. The first step to transcending the illusion of self is observing yourself with complete honesty. Close your eyes and silently ask yourself, who am I without my thoughts? Simply notice the space that arises before your mind tries to answer. There's a brief moment of silence before the thoughts return. That space is you. It is pure presence, without a name, without a story, without judgment. Now take it further. Observe your thoughts as if they were clouds passing through the sky. You can see them, but you don't have to hold on to them. What happens when you realize that you are not your thoughts, but rather the one observing them? In that moment, you begin to step outside the illusion of self. Everything has two poles, and opposites are just extremes of the same thing. This means that any belief you hold about yourself can be transformed. No identity is fixed. It is simply a reflection of the pole your perception is vibrating at. If you see yourself as limited, that perception isn't an absolute truth. It's just one extreme of a spectrum where infinite potential also exists. The key to reprogramming your identity lies in shifting the polarity of your perception. Whenever a thought reinforces a limiting identity, ask yourself, what's the opposite version of this belief? If your mind says, I'm not capable, shift it to, what if I'm more capable than I ever imagined? If your mind says, I'm stuck in this pattern, shift it to, what if I already have the key to break free? If your mind says, I'm just a small individual, shift it to, what if my consciousness is limitless? This polarity shift expands your perception. Your mind starts accepting new possibilities, and your identity begins to transform. Because the truth is, you don't need to become anything. You just need to remember who you already are. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. If your identity shifts as your mental vibration shifts, then raising that vibration is the key to accessing your true essence. But how do you do that? Your mental vibration is shaped by what you focus on. If your attention is on problems, doubts, and fears, your energy will feel scattered and heavy. But if you direct your focus toward higher states of consciousness, like gratitude, presence, and inner stillness, your vibration expands and your perception of self transforms. For a few minutes, focus on the feeling of being present. Feel your breath. Listen to the sounds around you without interpreting them. Just be here, right now. Now bring to mind a moment when you felt deeply connected to yourself, a moment of clarity, peace, or love. Allow yourself to relive that feeling. Notice that this feeling didn't come from anything external. It was already within you. And the more you access it, the more it becomes your natural state. Your identity isn't a name, a story, or a body. Your identity is a state of consciousness. And that consciousness expands as your vibration rises. If you want to transcend the illusion of self, don't search outside of yourself. Simply shift what you choose to focus on within, because in the end, what you've been searching for has been here all along. You are not who you think you are. You are who you choose to be. If your identity is just a mental construct, then it was never fixed to begin with. You may have spent your entire life believing that you are nothing more than a reflection of your memories, experiences, and conditioning, but that's just a story your mind has been telling itself. And like any story, it can be rewritten. The Hermetic laws teach that the true self is not a name, a body, or a collection of thoughts. It isn't bound by the limitations of the individual mind. It is pure, infinite consciousness, connected to the whole. But over time, you were taught to identify with the passing clouds of the mind, forgetting about the infinite sky that has always been behind them. Now that you know this, the real question is, if your mind creates the version of who you think you are, why keep believing in a limited identity? And even more importantly, if you could be any version of yourself, who would you choose to be? This answer doesn't have to come from logic. Just feel it. There is a self within you that has always been there, waiting to be recognized. The challenge now is simple but powerful. Start questioning your identity and reprogram it consciously. Observe your thoughts, your beliefs, and everything you've accepted as truth. And then choose. Because in the end, you were never what your mind led you to believe. You are whatever you decide to awaken within yourself.